Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we tear through the source material so you can be instantly well-informed. Today, we are strapping into the backs of dragons, metaphorically speaking, and flying high over Westeros. Specifically, we're looking at the origins and really the foundational tragedy of House of the Dragon. We've got this stack of sources here that, well, they seem to tell us exactly how the creators engineered the coming catastrophe. You know, the Dance of the Dragons, that horrific civil war, the fight between the Greens and the Blacks. It's this internal Targaryen conflict that just rips the dynasty apart. Okay, let's unpack this. The really intriguing nugget buried in these documents, the thing that jumps out, is this idea that the biggest, most devastating conflicts are often kind of predestined. They aren't caused by, one bad decision on a Tuesday. It's more about generations of structural choices that make the eventual war, well, unavoidable, regardless of who the key players actually are.
And that concept, that inevitability, that's our focus today. Our mission here is to distill this source material to really understand the narrative architecture of that conflict. We want to figure out why the show, especially in that foundational first season, went to such lengths to frame this horrific event as, well, not just likely, but completely inevitable. It's the difference between just a sad story and a true tragedy, you see.
Right. And before we dive headfirst into the doom that awaits these characters, let's just quickly nail down the basics the sources confirm. We are, of course, talking about the HBO hit House of the Dragon, rated TVMA, firmly in the drama, action, fantasy genres. Premiered back on August 21st, 2022.
And critically, we should acknowledge the creative minds steering this whole thing. Our sources confirm that while George R.R. Martin is co-creator and executive producer, the day-to-day heavy lifting is done by showrunner Ryan Condal, along with key directors like Claire Kilner and Geeta Patel. I mean, their job was huge.
Monumental, yeah.
Translating this sprawling, dense, historical chronicle into a visual story and making the audience feel that weight of historical inevitability right from the get-go.
That structural challenge, it brings us right to the core concept driving this narrative, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The sources flat out label the fight between the Greens and the Blacks as the crux of the entire spinoff. And they use this incredibly powerful language to describe the war coming, not as a choice, but as a consequence.
Yeah, the document calls the battle almost predestined because of everything that happened before it. That phrasing, it just immediately sets the tone. It tells you, the audience, look, this isn't some simple morality play where we just wait to see who wins or who the bad guy is. No, this is a tragedy, and it's rooted deep in structural failure.
If a catastrophe is truly predestined, I mean, that fundamentally changes how we view the characters involved, right? They stop being masters of their own fate and start becoming, well, actors in a play written long ago by Targaryen history itself.
Exactly. And that's where the line between predestination and agency gets so crucial for the show's success. The sources make a really critical point about the main players, Rhaenyra and Alicent. They detail that by the time they're having serious talks about, trying to prevent the fighting, by the time the sides are really hardening, neither of them actually has any control over it.
But hang on, if we accept that premise from the source material, that the conflict was almost predestined, doesn't that kind of undermine the drama of season 1? I mean, if we already know the outcome, why spend 10 episodes watching the setup?
Well, that's the key question the showrunners had to tackle, right? And the sources actually explain their strategy pretty clearly. The drama shifts. It's not will they fight anymore. It becomes how exactly did we get here? And the answer to that lies in understanding the foundational structure.
Okay, walk us through what foundational structure really means here.
It means the responsibility isn't just on Rhaenyra or Alicent's shoulders. It's spread out across history. Think about King Viserys. His decision, naming Rhaenyra heir, it was progressive for its time, maybe, but it flew in the face of centuries of Westerosi tradition, and he didn't really establish a clear precedent for a ruling queen. So he essentially created two claims to the Iron Throne, both legitimate feeling, both compelling in their own way. By the time he dies, the conflict isn't just about personalities anymore. It's actually baked into the rules of succession themselves.
So Viserys' desire for peace, it actually guarantees the war down the line. That's just devastating irony.
It really is, and this is where the heartbreak truly sets in, I think. The source material specifically says that Rhaenyra and Alicent's failure to stop the war was not for lack of trying.
Wow.
They are actively fighting against this historical momentum, pushing against it, but the political and cultural current, it's just too strong. They can't turn it.
That sense of futile effort, that's what really elevates it from just spectacle to actual tragedy, isn't it? So if their best efforts are ultimately useless, How did the showrunners make sure that we, the audience, still cared about their journey before the inevitable war?
Right, because that structural view really dictates the narrative pacing. And that's the key to season 1. We know, based on these sources, that the most explosive battles are yet to come, no question, and that they will stun viewers with their action and emotion. But the show very deliberately held back on that spectacle early on.
So the writers are basically telling us up front, hey, we're delaying the big payoff. Why do that?
That's the key narrative choice they made. Before the big spectacle, the fire and blood, the creators felt it was absolutely essential to spend maximum time showing the root cause behind the catastrophe. They're prioritizing the why, the generational slights, the broken promises, the flawed system itself, prioritizing that over the what, which is the battles.
Okay, that makes sense. That strategic choice explains why the early season felt so heavy on, well, political setup, lots of dialogue, establishing these complex relationships, kids growing up.
Exactly.
They're meticulously charting the origins of the conflict, step by deliberate step.
Think about it. If they just jumped straight into the battles, yeah, it would have been a cool action show, maybe even up there with the big Game of Thrones battles.
Sure.
But because they took all that time to map out the inevitability of it all, the emotional payoff, when the violence finally does hit in later seasons, it's magnified like tenfold.
It's a slow burn, designed for maximum incineration later on.
Okay.
So, we get the purpose of season 1, and the sources clarify the role of what's coming next. Season 2, they tell us, explores the most important parts of the conflict.
Right.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This strategic narrative pacing, focusing on that root cause, the character stuff. It's all designed specifically to make the impact of every actual battle a lot bigger. It turns every death, every betrayal, into something we kind of saw coming for years, in Showtime anyway.
Precisely. You watch these characters you've invested in, characters you care about, fall into traps. Traps that you, the audience, were shown being carefully built maybe 20 years earlier in the show's timeline. It just transforms spectacle into something consequential, meaningful tragedy. The audience knows the history, or at least the show's version of it, and knowing that history makes watching them try and fail to reconcile, it makes it all the more painful.
Okay, moving from that big picture, the macro level structure, let's talk about the human element, the intense volatile energy that kind of fuels this predestined path. Because even if the conflict itself is inevitable, the sources show us these characters are filling in the details with some pretty explosive passion.
And you see that passion reflected in the show's success, right? The sources note the high engagement, that 9.610 rating. People are really investing, not just in the political chess game, but in the people moving the pieces.
Definitely. And when we look at the key human elements mentioned in these documents, we got to talk about 2 main cast members who really embody that volatile energy. Matt Smith, playing the magnetic but often totally unpredictable Prince Daemon Targaryen, and Fabien Frankel as the complex, sometimes resentful Ser Criston Cole.
Key players, for sure.
And to bring that intensity down to a really specific kind of visceral character dynamic, one that almost seems to embody these destructive forces of fate. There's one quote from the sources that just jumps out.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is how the source material pulls back the curtain a bit on the raw emotional engine driving things. The quote we have is from Emma Darcy, who plays Rhaenyra, talking about their intense dynamic with Matt Smith's Daemon.
Right, Darcy said, regarding one of their intense scenes. The erotic energy is dangerous. It's bloodthirsty.
Wow. That is a phenomenal piece of insight, isn't it? It speaks directly to how these characters, even if their political efforts towards peace are doomed, they're driven by these primal, chaotic, even destructive forces. Like, even if Alicent and Rhaenyra had somehow managed a lasting truce, you get the sense that the underlying ambition, that bloodthirsty passion shown by characters like Daemon, it would probably ensure the political structure collapses anyway. These inner demons are like the engine of fate,
That quote really captures the high stakes perfectly. Even when they aren't, wielding swords or shouting decrees, it shows the characters themselves are contributing to the inevitability through sheer raw emotional intensity.
And this commitment to the high-stakes, historically tragic narrative, it seems pervasive across the whole franchise, really. The sources briefly touch on other upcoming Game of Thrones spinoffs, like that Jon Snow one with Kit Harington maybe happening.
Right.
And they also discuss what happens to every major House of the Dragon character in the books.
Why bring up the books or other spinoffs here, though? How does that connect?
I think it reinforces the main idea from the show's creators. Every single piece, whether it's an individual character's fate detailed in the books or a whole new show, it has to connect back to the bigger picture, back to the established history and lore. Every story, every detail, every dangerous quote like Darcy's, it all reinforces the tragic arc of the Targaryen dynasty and its eventual downfall. It's all part of the same tapestry.
Okay, so to kind of wrap up our deep dive for you, this exploration, looking at these sources, it really revealed that the true catastrophe in House of the Dragon, maybe it isn't the physical battles still on the horizon. Maybe the real catastrophe is the gradual, seemingly unavoidable buildup of that root cause. The real tragedy is the systemic failure that neither Rhaenyra nor Alicent could stop, no matter how hard they tried.
Yeah, the key insight here is completely about narrative strategy. The show's success ultimately hinges on prioritizing the why. That predestined conflict born of history, flawed succession rules, and yeah, that primal human passion. Prioritizing that over the what, which is the battles themselves. By doing that, they're essentially stacking the emotional deck. They're ensuring maximum devastation, maximum impact when Season 2 and beyond finally deliver the promised action.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If the structural failure of a dynasty is so total, if a civil war is genuinely unavoidable because of everything that came before, does the concept of heroic action or villainous action on the part of the individuals, does it even matter in the end? Or are the Greens and the Blacks just fulfilling a tragic, blood-soaked destiny that was written by their own history long ago? That's definitely something to chew on as you prepare for the dragons to finally fly.